I noticed her before she noticed me, or maybe she did and just didn't let it show. Clara had that kind of quiet control that made you question your own perception. Even the way she leaned against the counter, her fingers wrapped around a mug gone cold, looked deliberate, like she'd rehearsed the art of restraint. The bookstore was nearly empty that evening. Just the faint hum of the heater and the soft tapping of rain against the window. I was shelving a stack of used paperbacks when she came in, her hair a little damp, her scarf loose at her throat. She smiled in that polite way older women do when they think they're just passing through a space. But she didn't pass through. She lingered near the poetry section, tracing the spines with slow fingertips. When she spoke, her voice was low, the kind that filled the air even after she stopped talking. "Do you still have the Neruda collection from last week?" I turned, a little too quickly. "We might. I can check the back." "Don't trouble yourself," she said, but her eyes didn't move away. They stayed on me, steady, curious, as if she was testing how long I'd hold her gaze before looking away. I didn't. Not right away, anyway. She smiled then, small, almost private. "You remind me of someone who used to shelve books like they were secrets." The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe it was the way she said used to, like it meant something unfinished. I found the Neruda book and brought it over. When she took it, her fingers brushed mine, a quick, accidental touch that somehow felt deliberate. Her skin was warm, softer than I expected. I froze for half a second longer than was polite, and she noticed. Her lips parted, not quite a smile, not quite a frown. Just awareness. "Thank you," she murmured. The air between us felt heavier after that. She flipped through the book, not really reading, just moving her thumb along the edge of the pages. I watched her, pretending to straighten the shelf beside her. Every time she looked up, I found something else to stare at, the clock, the window, anything but her eyes. "Do you ever read these?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said. "When no one's looking." She laughed softly, a sound like breath on glass. "You say that as if reading poetry were a guilty secret. Maybe it is." That earned me another look, longer this time. She closed the book gently, sliding her hand over the cover. "Then you should keep this one hidden. Some words can't be read without feeling too much." She stepped closer, close enough for the scent of her, cedar and rain, to fill the space between us. My heartbeat felt too loud, too obvious. She noticed that too. I could tell by the way her gaze dipped briefly to my collarbone before returning to my eyes. "I shouldn't," she whispered. I didn't ask what she meant. Her hand moved, barely, a tremor of decision that stopped halfway. I could see the conflict flicker across her face, the hesitation of someone who'd built walls and was suddenly tired of standing behind them. Then I heard myself speak, voice low, unsure. "If I cross this line, there's no going back." For a second, either of us breathed. The space between us became a question neither of us could answer. And then, the bell above the bookstore door rang. Someone else had come in. Clara stepped back, eyes breaking from mine just as the sound of rain returned to fill the silence that it had been a week since that night in the bookstore, and yet I couldn't stop replaying it. The way she'd looked at me before stepping back, how her voice had dropped into something barely audible when she said, "I shouldn't." Since then, she'd come by twice. Each time, late in the evening, always when the shop was quiet. She never stayed long. Just long enough to browse the same shelves, to exchange a few words that felt harmless on the surface but carried something underneath, something neither of us wanted to name. I'd started waiting for her without admitting I was waiting. Tonight, she came in wearing the same scarf, hair tucked behind one ear. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes, like she hadn't slept well. She looked softer somehow, undone around the edges. "Long day?" I asked. She exhaled a laugh, short, weary. "I teach teenagers. Every day is long." I smiled, but she didn't. She was watching me again, that quiet assessment that made me want to stand straighter and disappear at the same time. I offered her tea from the small kettle we kept behind the counter. She hesitated, then nodded. "Only if you'll have some too?" We sat near the window, mugs warming our hands. The rain had started again, gentle, rhythmic. She looked out at it for a while before speaking. My husband used to hate the rain, she said, almost to herself. He said it made him feel trapped inside. I waited. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. He was younger than I am now. Her voice didn't break, but her fingers tightened around the cup until the ceramic clicked softly. I'm sorry, I said. She nodded once. I am too. Still. It doesn't fade the way people promise it will. The air grew heavier. I wanted to reach out, to do something, but I stayed still, afraid that even a small movement might make her retreat again. She noticed my hesitation. You don't have to look so careful, she murmured. I tried to smile, but it came out uneven. I just don't want to cross another line. Her lips curved slightly, not a smile, exactly, more like recognition. You already did, she said. Silence filled the next few seconds, warm and charged. She leaned forward to set her cup down, and her hand brushed my wrist, not by accident this time. The contact was light, but it felt deliberate enough to stop everything else from existing. Her fingers lingered, then withdrew slowly, as if she was teaching herself restraint. I'm not supposed to be here, she whispered. I know. I'm old enough to know better. I don't care. She inhaled, sharp and shallow, not from surprise, but from understanding. Outside, a car passed, its headlights flickering across her face. For a moment, she looked younger, or maybe just unguarded. She reached for the book she'd left last time, Neruda again, and opened it to a page marked with a folded receipt. Her voice trembled slightly as she read aloud. I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees. When she looked up, her eyes met mine and didn't look away. The sound of rain blurred everything else. Neither of us moved, but something had already changed. The rain had turned to sunlight the next afternoon, the kind that made the bookstore windows glow. I wasn't expecting her, but Clara appeared again, no umbrella, hair wind-tangled, cheeks pink from the cold. She didn't speak when she came in, just smiled faintly and brushed rain from her coat. I noticed her hands were trembling, not from the weather. I was nearby, she said after a pause. I thought I'd return the book. Her voice carried that familiar contradiction, certainty and apology in the same breath. I took the book, feeling the warmth still trapped between its pages. You didn't finish it. Some words are better left half-read, she said, eyes lowering. I wanted to ask what she meant, but before I could, the bell above the door rang again. Sophie, my coworker, walked in with her usual burst of noise, the kind that shattered quiet things. Hey! The shipment's here. Did you Her gaze bounced between us. Clara stepped back so quickly she nearly hit the counter. Sorry, Sophie said, awkwardly cheerful. Didn't mean to interrupt. You didn't, Clara murmured, but her voice betrayed her. Sophie smiled, half teasing. Didn't know we had regulars this loyal. Clara managed a polite laugh, then turned to me. I should go. Stay, I said, softer than I meant to. She froze, the smallest shift, barely visible, then nodded toward the back room. Maybe for a minute. When Sophie disappeared to the storage area, Clara exhaled slowly, pressing a hand to her chest. That was close. Too close? She met my eyes. Maybe that's what scares me. We stood near the counter, the sunlight cutting across her face, highlighting the tiny lines near her mouth, the ones she always tried to hide. She looked beautiful in that way honesty is beautiful, unguarded, fragile. People talk, she said quietly. They always have. I don't care what they say. You should. Her words were sharp, but her body leaned toward me, drawn by something neither of us was naming anymore. A delivery truck rumbled outside. Papers fluttered on the counter. She reached to catch one. Our fingers met again. Neither of us pulled away this time. Her pulse was quick under my touch. I could feel it, a steady tremor that matched my own. Eli, she whispered, as if saying my name might stop her from doing something else. I wanted to kiss her then. I almost did, Her breath brushed my cheek, her lips parted, close enough that I could feel the warmth of what she wasn't saying. Then her phone buzzed. The sound sliced through the moment like glass. She flinched, stepping back, fumbling for the device. A message flashed briefly across the screen, from Dean's office. She silenced it, eyes darting to mine. "I shouldn't be here," she said again, quieter this time, as though she didn't believe it anymore. "Then why are you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out, fingers grazing the edge of my shirt, not quite holding, not quite letting go. For a breath, neither of us moved, suspended between what was right and what was already happening. Her hand stayed there, trembling slightly. "Because," she said finally, "I don't know how not to be." It was closing time again. The store smelled faintly of paper and rain-damp wool. Clara lingered by the register long after the lights should have been off. Her coat hung over a chair, her scarf loose, as if she'd forgotten how to leave. "I didn't mean to stay this late," she said, voice low. "You always say that," I replied, locking the door. The click of the bolt sounded final, too final. Her gaze flicked to the door, then back to me. "And yet you let me. I don't think I could stop you if I tried." That earned me a half-smile, small, almost shy, but it faded too quickly. She looked tired, her guard worn thin. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to love nights like this. The quiet ones. Before everything started feeling like something I shouldn't want." I stepped closer, slow enough to give her time to stop me. She didn't. Her breath caught when I reached to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. My fingers brushed her skin, warm, impossibly soft. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, maybe two. When she opened them, something had changed. Resolve, or surrender, or both. "Eli." The way she said my name, it wasn't a warning anymore. It was a confession. "I think about you when I shouldn't," she said. "At home. In class. I catch myself wanting." She stopped, searching for words, for permission. I stepped closer, my hand finding the edge of the counter beside her, trapping her between the wood and me. "Then don't stop wanting," I said. Her lips parted, a soft intake of breath. "You don't know what that means for me." "Then tell me." She hesitated, her eyes moving between my mouth and my eyes, as though weighing which was more dangerous. "I've spent years trying to be the kind of woman people don't whisper about. The kind who keeps things contained. And now?" Her voice shook. "Now I can't contain this." The words hit like a pulse. The air between us thickened, coffee, rain, skin. I could smell her perfume, faint and steady, something floral I'd never been able to name. Her hand rose, trembling, then pressed lightly against my chest, not pushing me away, just feeling the weight of me there. My heart hammered against her palm. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. She nodded. "That's what you do to me." She exhaled sharply, the sound halfway between a laugh and a gasp. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I already did." For a long second, either of us moved. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. I could feel her leaning closer, the space collapsing until her forehead brushed mine. Then she whispered, barely audible. "If we do this, it doesn't go back to before." I swallowed hard. "I don't want before." Our breaths mingled, close, trembling, inevitable. And just as our lips almost met, a sharp knock shattered the quiet. Both of us froze. Through the glass, Sophie's face appeared, pale in the streetlight. Clara's hand dropped. The moment fractured, the air gone. But her eyes stayed locked on mine, wide, unguarded, full of everything we hadn't yet done. The next morning, Clara didn't come in. For the first time in weeks, the bookstore felt hollow. I told myself she was busy, that the moment last night, the almost, had scared her off for good. I tried to focus on the shelves, on anything that wasn't the memory of her hand against my chest. But just before closing, Sophie cornered me behind the counter. "You and Professor Dalton," she said carefully, not looking at me. The sound of her name in Sophie's mouth hit like a blow. "What about her?" Sophie hesitated. You should be careful. People talk. And she trailed off, biting her lip. I wasn't supposed to see, but I heard the dean asking about her. Something about boundaries. The word hung there, cold and final. Before I could answer, the door opened. Clara stood there, not composed, not graceful. Her expression was unreadable, eyes rimmed red, like she'd been crying or trying not to. Sophie straightened immediately, offering a too bright "Evening, Professor." Then, sensing the tension, she slipped into the back room. Clara waited until she was gone. Then she said, "We have a problem." Her tone was steady, but her hands weren't. She kept twisting the ring on her finger, a nervous habit I'd never seen before. "What happened?" I asked. "They know," she said softly. "About the evenings. About us." "There is no us," I said too quickly, though the lie burned even as I spoke it. She gave a hollow laugh. "That's what I told them too." The silence that followed was worse than anger. It was the kind of silence where both people already know what comes next. "I didn't mean for this to touch your life," she continued. "You're just starting out. You have everything ahead of you, and I—" "Don't do that," I cut in. "Don't talk about me like I'm someone you have to protect." "I'm not protecting you," she said. "I'm trying to protect what's left of myself." I stepped toward her, but she moved back. Her heel hit a stack of boxes, and she steadied herself against the wall. I could see the tremor in her shoulders, the battle between wanting to stay and wanting to run. "You lied to them," I said quietly. Her eyes lifted to mine, raw and unguarded. "I lied to myself first." Something inside me broke at that. I reached out before I could stop myself, fingers brushing the edge of her sleeve. She didn't pull away, not at first. Her breath trembled. "You shouldn't touch me right now." "Then tell me to stop." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, she stepped forward close enough that I could feel the heat of her against me, close enough that every reason to stay apart collapsed. Then, with a shuddering breath, she whispered, "They're making me take a leave." "What?" "It's already done," she said, voice cracking. "The dean said it's for appearances. They think—" Her eyes searched mine, desperate and frightened. "They think you mean more to me than you should." I swallowed, pulse hammering. "Do I?" Her silence was the answer. The air between us felt dangerous now, not just forbidden but fragile, like one wrong breath could shatter everything. And yet she didn't step back this time. The bookstore felt smaller that night. The lights were dimmed, the aisles narrow with shadows. Clara stood near the poetry shelf again, the same one where everything had begun, her hand tracing the spines like she was saying goodbye. She didn't look up when I came in. "I told them I'd leave quietly," she said, voice calm, too calm. "No meetings, no arguments. Just disappear for a while. That's how these things are handled." Her words should have sounded practical. Instead, they broke something in the air between us. "Disappear?" I repeated. She nodded once, still not facing me. "It's cleaner that way. For both of us." I moved closer, step by step, until I could see her reflection in the glass of the window beside the shelf. Her eyes were wet but steady. "You really think walking away will make this easier?" I asked. "Not easier," she said. "Just survivable." There was a tremor under her composure, a faint shaking in her fingers as she reached for the Neruda book one last time. When she turned toward me, the lamplight hit her face in soft gold. "I shouldn't have let it go this far," she whispered. "You didn't let it," I said. "We both did." Her breath caught. The silence that followed was heavy enough to fill every corner of the room. I took another step, then another, until I could feel the warmth radiating from her. The smell of rain on her coat, the faint trace of her perfume, all of it pulled me closer. She lifted her chin slightly, like she was preparing herself for something inevitable. "Eli," she said softly, "if I let this happen, I lose everything I've spent years holding together." I searched her face, the tightness around her mouth, the fear in her eyes, the longing she couldn't quite hide. And if you don't? Her lips trembled. Then I lose this. The air went still. I reached up, fingers hesitating near her cheek. When I finally touched her, she didn't flinch. Her skin was warm, alive beneath my hand. For a heartbeat, we just breathed, shallow, uneven, afraid of the next moment. Tell me to stop, I whispered. She closed her eyes. I can't. Her hand rose slowly, trembling, until it rested against my chest again, that same small space we danced around for weeks. She could feel the thud of my heartbeat beneath her palm. This isn't how it's supposed to happen, she said. Maybe it's exactly how it's supposed to, I answered. The distance between us dissolved, an inch, maybe less. Every part of the world seemed to quiet, the rain outside, the ticking clock, even our own breathing. Then, with the faintest tremor in her voice, she said, Eli, if you cross this line, there's no going back. I didn't move for a long second, long enough for the question to hang there, fragile and burning. And then I did. Slowly, deliberately, I stepped across. She didn't step away. Morning crept in slowly, turning the rain-soaked windows pale gold. The bookstore was still, dust floating in the thin light. Clara sat by the window with her coat folded over her lap, the Neruda book open but unread. I watched her for a moment before speaking. You're early. She smiled faintly. Couldn't sleep. Neither of us mentioned the night before, the choice made, the line crossed. It lived quietly in the space between us now, too real to need words. I thought you were leaving, I said. I still might. She turned a page she hadn't been reading. But maybe not right away. Her tone was soft, uncertain, not running, not staying. Something in between. I sat down across from her. For a while, we just listened to the world waking up, a car passing, the hum of the lights overhead, the gentle creak of old wood settling. I've been afraid of what this means, she said finally. Of what it makes me look like. What people might say. I leaned forward. You think I don't care about that? Her eyes lifted to mine. You're young. The world forgives youth. It doesn't forgive women my age for wanting something they shouldn't. You didn't want something you shouldn't, I said quietly. You wanted something real. She blinked hard, as if trying to decide whether to believe me. Then, slowly, she reached across the table. Her fingers brushed mine, hesitant, searching, and then intertwined. Her hand was warm. Small tremors ran through her fingers, but she didn't pull away. I thought I'd forgotten how this feels, she whispered. What? To be seen. Not as a teacher, not as someone who used to belong to someone else. Just as me. The words caught somewhere between her throat and her breath, fragile but unashamed. I squeezed her hand. You never stopped being that, I said. She smiled, the kind of smile that happens when fear finally gives up its fight. We sat like that for a long while. No declarations, no promises. Just quiet understanding. The age between us, the noise outside, the uncertainty of what came next, all of it existed, but none of it mattered right then. When she finally stood, she didn't rush to leave. She stepped close instead, close enough for her scent to wrap around me again, that familiar mix of cedar and rain. Her hand rose to my face, thumb brushing my cheek. Whatever happens, she said softly, you've changed something in me. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just leaned in until our foreheads touched. The world narrowed to the sound of our breathing, steady, calm, alive. For the first time, there was no line left to cross. Just two people, imperfect and certain, sitting in the quiet morning light, finally allowing themselves to stay. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?